Well, I think that was a really interesting conversation with Martin Buckland. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. He gave us a lot of really good suggestions on career management, and I think one of the big keys, other than resumes and a lot of other things that he had suggested from a career management standpoint, was this idea of networking. And I wanted to spend the last couple of minutes today on networking because I really think it is actually a art that not enough people really understand. And the word networking sort of suggests a negative connotation. You're caught up in a net, which I think is bad. I interviewed one person who once described it as friends making. And I think that is so much better than networking. Think about it as making friends. And she actually had this attitude of who's going to be my friend of the day when she woke up in the morning and wondering about who the next person was that she was going to meet. I wanted to share with you a couple of suggestions that, frankly, I don't do very well, but some of the people that I've worked for or get to know over time have done extremely well that really, I think, assists in networking. There's this guy that does a lot of speeches on being a good guy that many of you have probably read or heard about. And he had this idea about sending gift cards. And it sounds like such a silly but simple idea. And his point was, if you get a gift card, you put it on your credenza, you put it on your coffee table, you put it on your piano, whatever, and you look at it for a long time. If you send someone a birthday greeting on Facebook or LinkedIn or even send them a text or a message, it's gone within a couple of seconds. But if you send someone a card, they remember it for a long time. And the best and most powerful ones are thank you cards because you're showing gratitude. And so I think that idea of sending a card to someone, in snail mail is really powerful. I did this course on social capital, and I've written some pieces on social capital, and it's interesting to put a theoretical underpinning to it for a second. And practitioners, academics of social capital say that there's three different types of social capital: bonding, bridging, and linking. Bonding is those close associations with people you see all the time, whether it's your family, whether it's your tight group at work, but they're the people that you know well and that you see all the time. Bridging is the people that you don't see all that often. They're the friends of friends. They're the people in other departments. They're the people in other companies. They're people that you see through church or through a social organization or something like that. It's interesting. In study after study, people get bonuses, promotions, new jobs, new mates, etc., from those that they have bridging relationships with rather than bonding relationships with. And the reason why is the bonding ones are ones you see all every day. And so therefore, you know everything that they know, and you know the people that they know, and you know the opportunities that they know. But it's those bridging relationships where someone you see once in a while, or you've got a less tight relationship with, that bring you those new opportunities and ideas. A famous paper by Mark Granovator, was written about the strength of weak links, which is effectively that those weak links, those bridging links, are the most important links in life to give you new opportunities, not necessarily to execute something that you're doing today, because those are the people that you're working with day in and day out, or in your family that you're with day in and day out. But those are the relationships that it's been proven, if you've got relationships in a bank with other people in other departments, or in a real estate firm with other real estate brokers and people in other cities that give you recommendations, or, go on and you think about all those examples, get the biggest promotions, get the biggest bonuses, do their best in the careers, etc. And then there's another concept that not all academics agree exists or think it's sort of the same as bridging, but some people have described as linking connections. And this is with people that are in completely different segments or sectors of society. And the example would be, instead of business, they're in government, or they're in politics, or they're in academia, or they're maybe in banking, but they're in a very different sector. And linking ends up being those people that you have sort of similar to bridging relationships with, but even sort of less connected, but they end up being critically important in very tough times, in emergencies. You can think about the doctor that you might call an emergency. You can think about the banker you might call if you're in financial distress. You can think about the government official that you might need a subsidy from when something goes really wrong. And so if you think about those three relationships: bonding with tight relationships, bridging with people that are farther afield, and linking with people that are really different segments of society, I think it sort of helps understand the kind of relationships, connections that one should be trying to build over time and cultivate. And what Martin said about you need to have those connections, you need to have those relationships, you need to be interacting with them when you don't need them, so that when you do need them, they don't become transactional. And I wanted to give you a couple of suggestions of people I've met that have done it incredibly well. And probably the best was Jimmy Pattison, who I had the pleasure of working with for a couple of years. And he did a couple of things that were, I think really important. One rule he had was every call, every email had to be answered within 48 hours. So responsiveness was really important. Another rule he had, which really surprised me, is he says, Brian, we're going to go to their office because people are more disarmed when you go to their office. And so, here he was, at the time, a $7 billionaire. I think he's over 10 billion now. He and I would get up out of our office and walk down, West Georgia, Robson in Vancouver, and we'd walk into the banker's office. And, they were shocked to see this billionaire walk into their office and have a meeting with them, or go to their boardroom or whatever that, or fly to their city, whatever that would be. And it's true. People are sort of disarmed and appreciate it when you come see them. He would go to the airport to pick people up. He'd have this huge Cadillac and he'd go and he'd drive out to the airport. Jimmy Pattison, ex-billionaire, pick me up at the airport. What an incredible opportunity. He, before he hired people, he wanted to meet not only them, but he wanted to have dinner with them and their spouse, so they understood what they were like in real life. He took people on his boat and a bunch of people on his boat, and he would ask everyone to speak for 2 minutes about something that was critically important to them. And, you give someone 2 minutes of uninterrupted time to speak about something that's critically important to them, standing up in front of other people, you really get a sense of what what a person is all about. And I think that was a really interesting and very helpful thing to do. He created a board, which was sort of like an advisory committee, because it was a private company owned 100% by himself, of really smart people that advised him on a fairly regular basis, and he kept in really good touch with them on a fairly regular basis. I had another boss who I think was really interesting, because every morning he had a call list. And actually, maybe it was every week he had a call list. And Brian Mulroney, former Prime Minister of Canada, was renowned for this. He would put together a call list. And when he had a free moment, when he was in the car or when he was waiting in an office or when he was, doing something, he would call some of the people that he hadn't touched base with recently. And he would go through that call list, and he would make sure that he connected up with people on a fairly regular basis. And he said, if you don't have the call list, you'll neglect some people and you'll forget connecting up with some people. I ended up having a relationship with someone who I thought was really interesting in their use of LinkedIn in regards to meetings. And he would, before he had a meeting with anybody, he would search out on LinkedIn, their background, whether it was a lunch meeting or a bank meeting or a new opportunity meeting or whatever it was. He would always know something about the individual, such that when he got to the meeting, he would say in one of the opening, couple of minutes, I understand you're into biking, or I understand you're into, mountain climbing, or I understand you're, and people are unbelievably disarmed. And you make that connection if you take the time to find out what they're about and what's important to them, and that you mention it and you show true interest in what they're all about. And someone else that I went to hear speak at some point in time said, if you make that connection with someone and you remember it, you'll never forget their name, what they do, because all of a sudden, cycling and Randy Rutherford are going to be something that you associate in your mind forever. It's one of those memory tricks. I had a really interesting experience on an airplane recently where I had a really interesting conversation with my seatmate. They took out a business card, and on the business card, they wrote, met on an airplane, talked about. And I'll never forget that I met on an airplane and we talked about this topic. And, actually having that pen and taking out that business card and writing on the business card when we met and what we talked about is very helpful, because you end up never forgetting that individual, that interaction. And it's not like the million other business cards that you get and that you file away. And, before we landed, the individual had connected up with me on LinkedIn, so that we ended up establishing that connection, and it'll hopefully be a connection that'll be important in the future. Before going to a convention, someone told me that you always look at some of the key speakers or some of the other key attendees, look them up on LinkedIn, see what their background is, and reach out ahead of time to say, looking forward to hopefully meeting with you and chatting about blah, blah, blah. Or, do you have time for a coffee during the intermissions between some of the sessions? So that you don't just go into a networking session, into a conference or something, wondering if there's anyone you're going to be able to meet that's going to be of any interest or helpful. You go in actually planning to meet a few people. And then I think the most important suggestion that someone made to me at one point in time was, don't ask, what do you do? Ask either something like, what's important to you in life? Or how could I help you, either in your career or otherwise? So in other words, understand the real person rather than just the job that they do, and try to help. Another person told me, what you want to do is, before you ask for an introduction to someone else, offer an introduction to that person. So, thanks for coming. Great to meet you. Is there anyone here that you were trying to meet that I could help maybe introduce you to? I've got a friend, Howard Brown is his name. He is the best person at connecting people to people I've ever met. And he'll remember people's resumes, and he'll be able to say, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Crombie, and this is, what they're all about. And you guys could really do some interesting work together. The guy is unbelievable at those connections, and those connections end up being helpful and important. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that Martin Buckland's comments about networking, I think, are some of the most important comments in the chat we had with him tonight. And if you do it like friend making, and if you're proactive about it, and if you're authentic about it, and if you're real, and you try to put yourself forward as a helper first and of interested in the other person first, it'll come back to you in multiples of benefit thereafter. Anyway, that's a couple of thoughts for you on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour from my experience, and frankly, not from my own experience, but mostly from people I've met that are incredibly good at friend making. Thanks for joining. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are available on my website, briancrombie.com, and on social media. I post them on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Please join up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And my podcasts are on Apple, Audible, Speakeasy, and SoundCloud. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.